Bookish, Superlatives, and I'm really excited about it. We're at the end of December now, and I've read, I believe, 93 books. I'm on my 93rd right now. So I've read a lot. So I tried to go through them and pick different ones for each answer, even though some of them could have overlapped. But I'm really excited. So let's just get into it. First is most emotional book I read, and that definitely has to go to The Women by Kristen Hanna. I read 3 Kristen Hanna books this year, and they were all extremely emotional, but something about The Women just hit. It was just so sad, but it was so good. I don't cry to books very often. I used to, but I can't get myself to cry during a book anymore. But that book definitely made me shed some tears. I listened to it, so that I think also played a big part of me crying too. It was so sad, but so good. I can't recommend Kristen Hanna enough. Next is The Prettiest Cover, and that has to go to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which ironically, this was my least favorite book I read this year. I should have DNF'd it, and I wish I would have DNF'd it, but I was reading it for book club, and I wanted to push through so I could talk about it at book club, but it was horrible, and I hated every second of it. And I'm not a harsh critic of books, like, I'm really not. It has to be, like, really bad for me to hate it, and it was. I read the first, maybe chapter, and immediately was like, oh, no, I don't think this is gonna be for me. But like I said, I wanted to finish it for book club, so I got on Audible. I literally had to use a free trial for Audible just to read this, or just to listen to the book. And I listened to it, and listening to it didn't help. It was horrible. All that being said, the cover is beautiful, and I'm obsessed with the cover. If you love this book, I love that for you, and don't take anything I just said to heart, but it was not for me. Next is my favorite new author that I found, and that definitely is Kristen Hanna. I am obsessed with her. I want to read everything she's written. I have read, I've read this one, which was so good, so sad, and I read The Nightingale as well. And then I have not read True Colors yet, but that's on my list to read in 2025. So I'm excited for this one. But Kristen Hanna is just so good. I adore her writing. I'm not much of a just general fiction, or I didn't think I was super into historical fiction, but finding Kristen Hanna really has changed my mind on that, and I'm kind of obsessed with her. So if you were kind of hesitant to read her, because you didn't think you'd be into it, give it a try, because I felt the same way. So next is the most surprising book I read, and that definitely has to go to A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I'm sorry if I pronounced Ove wrong. I listened to the audiobook and still don't think I'm pronouncing it right. But anyway, I didn't ever think I would pick up a Frederick Bachman book. Kind of like Kristen Hanna, I didn't think it would be something I'd be enjoying, but my bestie read A Man Called Ove and loved it. Like, she raved about it, so I of course had to read it too, and I did it on audio, and I loved it. It was sweet and sad and emotional, but also like literally shockingly funny. It was just really good, and it was just a heartfelt read that I really loved, and so I was shocked by that one, because I read it for my bestie just to give it a try, expecting to give it like 3 stars, which I don't know why I went in with such a bad expectation, but I was scared for it. But I ended up giving it, I think, 4.25 stars, and I loved it. And now I'm wanting to read more of Frederick Bachman's books. I'm really excited to read Beartown. I'm hoping to read that this January. Next is the best series that I found this year, and that absolutely has to go to the Magnolia Parks universe. Can you talk about how beautiful this cover is also? It's the special edition, and it's stunning. This series blew up on Bookstagram and Book Talk and BookTube, and I was terrified of it. It was marketed kind of as like a Gossip Girl set in London, and I've never seen Gossip Girl, and I was just kind of scared to open it. I was scared to unlock this series. It just seemed, I don't know, it seemed a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It's like kind of a toxic romance. It's definitely a toxic romance. And there's some like gang lords and gangs going on. And that's not something that usually I draw to when picking up a book. But I just decided, you know what, whatever. I'm gonna start the series and give it a try because everyone loves it. And wow, I fell in love with it. I definitely have to say, these books don't follow a plot. So please don't go into them, if you're gonna try them, thinking there's a plot, because there's not. It's basically just a character study. Like, all of them just follow these characters and their lives and nothing else. Like, there's no real end goal with any of these books. There's so much drama, toxic relationships, toxic friendships, but it's so good. And I know that sounds kind of terrible, but I promise you, like, it's so good. It's so good. I actually prefer the Daisy Hates books in this series. So they alternate between Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. So the first one's Magnolia Parks, next one Daisy Hates, and then so on and so forth. Daisy Hates is my favorite. She has 2 books out, and I adore those so much. But the whole series is just, you just get attached to the characters, and so you don't really care that there's not a plot, because you're just having fun reading about them, even though their lives are highly unrealistic and they're very out of touch with reality, but it's just entertaining, you know? Next is my favorite audiobook of the year. This was really hard. This was my first year I actually listened to any audiobooks. I'd never listened to an audiobook before, and I really wanted to get into audiobooks, and I'm so glad I did because it changed the reading game for me, truly. But my favorite audiobook was honestly probably Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. I'm not really into nonfiction. I read so much for school in college, and I was just kind of not wanting to read anything nonfiction outside of that because I read so much in school. But obviously an autobiography is completely different than a school book. I just had to get past that mentally. But I absolutely adored this book. I'm obsessed with Tom Felton. I always have been. And I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. The whole Harry Potter universe feels like home to me. Reading this book or listening to it was the most fun experience. It was just so fun to listen to his life growing up as a child actor and his life in the Harry Potter world. And it was just really sweet to hear about him, and it was narrated by him, which made it perfect. It was just so good. I highly recommend, if you like Harry Potter at all, you will love it because there's so much behind the scenes elements that you learn about, which is really fun, and kind of when you watch the movies, it makes things like a little more fun now that you know the background of things. Next is Best Fictional Couple, and that was near impossible to choose, so I picked like 6 different ones, so bear with me. I read so many good romance books this year, so picking one couple was just not going to be possible. Most recently, I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams and Emily and Jack. I'm obsessed with them so much. This series, When in Rome, is one of my favorite series I've ever read. I'm obsessed with them, and this one was not a disappointment. This book was fantastic. The male main character in this book, Jack, like, he has become one of my favorite male main characters ever, and that's really saying something. And I'm obsessed. They're perfect. Pick up this book immediately if you haven't read it. We also have Given Our History. Teddy and Clara were precious. This is childhood friends to lovers. That's one of my favorite tropes. I eat it up every time. Even though people fight me and try to say it's boring, it's not boring. This book is a prime example of it not being boring. You get past and present timeline, which I love a past and present timeline. And so getting to see them as teenagers and then as grown-ups, I adore them. Another Sarah Adams book, we have Derek and Nora. I absolutely adore them. I love a sports romance. This was a fake marriage. Yes, it's a fake marriage. What is it called? It's a second chance romance, which I absolutely adore. I keep saying I adore all these different tropes. I have a lot of favorite tropes. I really love them. I adore them so much. They're just the cutest little couple, and I adore this book. Also, if you haven't picked this one up, read it immediately, please. I also adore Daisy and Christian from Daisy Hates. They are the cutest couple. A little bit of a toxic relationship going on there. A lot different than the other like fluffy romances that I love, but they're a sweet couple and I adore them so dearly. And I read 2 Abby Jimenez books this year, and both of those couples I absolutely adored. Justin and Emma from Just for the Summer, and Jacob and Bree from Yours Truly. Adored both of them. Both of those books, so good. I ate those books up, read them in like one sitting. Phenomenal. And Abby Jimenez just writes such amazing characters. I want to read more of her books this year because she just has such... The romances that she makes are emotional but also funny and so good. Next I have most disappointing read of the year, and that has to go to The 7-Year Slip. I didn't dislike the book. I think I rated it 4 stars, somewhere around there, and it wasn't bad, but I figured out that I don't like magical realism, and that kind of bummed me out because there's a lot of books in my TBR that are magical realism, but I just don't think I vibe with it, and that's okay. This book was so highly rated, and I had so many people both in real life and on Bookstagram tell me that they absolutely loved it. So when I read it and it just didn't hit, it was pretty disappointing. But overall, I think it was a good book. I just don't think the tropes that it had were necessarily for me. Last is favorite reread of the year. And this year, I reread the Selection series. This series, I don't care what anyone has to say, it's amazing. I loved it when I read it for the first time when I was 12, and I still love it at 22 years old. I have reread this series so many times over the years, but something about rereading it this time really just hit so hard. I did it on audio, which I'd never done it on audio before, so that was really fun. And it was just so good. It was really just so good, and I feel like I just kept finding, like, I love rereading books because I feel like you just find more and more each time you read it. And it was just really sweet, and there's just something so, like, sweet and fun about rereading a series. And like when you start this book, the fact that I like know the ending and like can find all like the little, I don't know, foreshadowing and stuff like that is really fun, and just like seeing the growth of the characters is really cool. I have like an unhealthy attachment to this series probably, so it's just a little deeper for me rereading this series, but it was so good, and honestly I would reread this series every year because it's just too good and I love it every time. And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and there will be plenty of more bookish content coming your way. So bye, see you next time.